Okay, let's get right into this. It's the 2026 World Cup quarterfinal rematch literally everyone has been waiting for. On one side, we've got an incredibly motivated Moroccan squad, and they are hungry to avenge their heartbreak from 2022. On the other side, a completely dominant French squad, looking to prove that, once again, their overwhelming firepower is just way too much to handle. Welcome to The Explainer. I am so pumped to guide you through this today, because we're going to take a really deep dive into the specific, on-pitch battles that will absolutely decide this massive game. This isn't just about nostalgia, right? It's a high-stakes, tactical chess match between two incredibly talented sides. If you want to know exactly which key matchups are going to dictate the outcome of this quarterfinal, stick around, because we're breaking it all down. So, here is our game plan for today. We'll quickly look at the 2022 semifinal rematch, then the paths to the quarterfinal, critical midfield injury absences, the huge Mbappe versus Hakimi matchup, the midfield chess match, and finally, predictions and tactical verdict.
All right, kicking things off with Part 1, the 2022 semifinal rematch and the historical weight it carries.
Look, you simply cannot talk about this matchup without flashing back to Qatar 2022. 4 years ago, Morocco made history, right? They were the first African team ever to reach a World Cup semifinal. It was an incredible Cinderella run. But that run hit a brick wall named France. Goals from Theo Hernandez in the 5th minute and Randall Kolo Muani late in the game completely ended the dream with a 2-0 French victory. Every single player who was there remembers it, and that historical weight sets a really intense stage for this rematch.
Moving right along to Part 2. Paths to the quarterfinal, focusing on form and firepower.
Just look at the wild contrast in form and style here. France has been on an absolute tear. They're boasting a tournament-leading 17 goals and 6 consecutive wins. I mean, they're a team built entirely on overwhelming attacking dominance. But then, on the flip side, Morocco brings this incredibly resilient 34-game international unbeaten streak to the table. They recently dismantled co-host Canada in a 3-0 demolition, which really just proves that their rock-solid defensive organization is paired with this ruthless, clinical efficiency. It's literally the classic unstoppable force meeting the immovable object.
That brings us to Part 3, critical midfield injury absences, or what I like to call the missing pieces.
So, both squads are dealing with some massive blows to their midfield. France is missing Aurélien Tchouameni due to a left adductor and groin tear. At the same time, Morocco is highly likely to be without Ismail Saibari because of a suspected hamstring tear he picked up against Canada. The absolutely crucial thing to understand here is the domino effect. Saibari already had 3 goals this tournament before he limped off. Now, Soufiane Rahimi is expected to step up and deputize, and that is going to dramatically shift Morocco's whole dynamic in the final third.
And man, for France, the loss of Tchouameni just cannot be overstated. When the press asked about his status, he bluntly said, "My injury? It's bad." Losing his engine and his positional discipline right at the base of the midfield completely disrupts France's balance, and as we're going to see in a minute, it gives Morocco a very specific, glaring target to attack.
Okay, Part 4. This is the matchup everyone is talking about. Mbappe versus Hakimi on the flank.
Let's break down exactly how this flank battle is going to unfold tactically. Step 1, France's left back, Lucas Digne, acts almost like an auxiliary winger. He's going to push high to overload the wide channel right alongside Kylian Mbappe, but doing that leaves a massive 40-yard highway totally vacant behind him. So step 2, Morocco's manager, Ouabi, is going to instruct Achraf Hakimi to stay wide, bypass the midfield in transition, and exploit that exact highway. But wait, step 3 is Deschamps' brilliant built-in structural countermeasure. Right back, Jules Koundé is instructed to tuck inside horizontally. This forms a super rigid back 3 with Saliba and Upamecano, basically ensuring that if Hakimi tries to counterattack into that vacant space, Saliba is already right there to snuff out the running lane. It's a high-stakes game of cat and mouse, and it is fascinating.
And to put Hakimi's defensive nightmare into perspective, just look at the sheer firepower his defense has to contain. Kylian Mbappe is currently leading the Golden Boot race with 7 tournament goals, and he's fully supported by Ousmane Dembélé, who has 4. On the flip side, Morocco is really going to have to rely on players like Azzedine Ounahi, who looked great finding his touch with a brace against Canada, to capitalize whenever they get those fleeting transition moments.
Next up, Part 5, the midfield chess match and how to exploit the pivot.
So, with Mano Kone stepping into that double pivot for France to replace Tchouameni, here's what you really need to ask yourself. How is Morocco's manager going to trigger his pressing traps when Michael Olise cuts inside from the right, totally exposing Kone all alone in the center circle?
Well, here's Morocco's very specific answer to that. They're going to form a narrow midfield funnel. By clogging the right half space with their 18-year-old prodigy Ayoub Boudiati and Neil El Ainawi, they literally force the play into a backward pass to Kone. The exact second Kone receives that ball under duress, Morocco triggers a heavy squeeze. The whole goal here is to pressure Kone, who, let's be honest, lacks Tchouaméni's elite positional discipline, into turning the ball over deep in the French third. If they do that, it sparks rapid, incredibly dangerous transitions.
But you know, Deschamps is an absolute master of structural stability. To effortlessly bypass this Moroccan high press, William Saliba will just drop extremely deep into a wider splitting stance. This stretches the field so much that Morocco's pressing lines just failed to cover the distance. On top of that, to protect Kone from being isolated centrally, Adrien Rabiot is ordered to hold back his usual forward runs. Instead, he drops 5 yards deeper, sitting right next to Kone to form a solid shield. If Morocco overcommits and tries to chase Kone, Rabiot simply rolls a quick pass out wide to Dembélé, instantly turning Morocco's aggressive press into a massive defensive vacuum. It's brilliant.
Finally, Part 6, Predictions and Tactical Verdict. The Final Fallout.
Okay, see this number right here, 9.79? That is absolutely massive. It represents France's expected goals so far this entire tournament compared to Morocco's 6.40. In a quarterfinal match where the margins shrink and every mistake is punished, that gap in chance quality speaks loudly. It shows exactly why the odds and the betting markets so heavily favor Les Bleus to advance.
So looking at all this data neutrally, we're essentially staring at two main scenarios. If France scores first and forces Morocco to abandon that super compact shape, we're very likely looking at a fast, comfortable 2-1 France win, heavily powered by their unmatched bench depth featuring guys like Barcola and Duo. However, if Morocco utilizes their incredible discipline, leverages their obvious set-piece danger, and somehow scores first, they could very easily push this into a really tense 1-1 draw heading straight into extra time.
Which brings us right down to it. The battle lines are officially drawn between Hakimi and Mbappé on the flank, and we are set for a fascinating structural war right in the middle of the park. As you watch this game unfold, I want you to keep this in mind. Will the sheer gap in France's attacking depth ultimately shatter Morocco's incredibly disciplined defensive block? Or can the Atlas Lions spring the perfect trap? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and enjoy the match.